Hello, you are listening to NPE Stories. This is a podcast where NPEs can share their story. I'm your host, Lily, and I found out I was an NPE through an ancestry DNA test that changed my life forever. NPE is a term that stands for not parent expected or non-paternal event. This means that one or more of our parents are not who we believe them to be. NPE Stories is a podcast where NPEs can share their story of what their original family was like, how they found out they were an NPE, and what their journey has been like since the day they found out. And welcome to episode 42. Today I am speaking with Scott. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Lily. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for doing this today. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and they've helped.
That's great. That's exactly what we're trying to do here is just share our stories.
Yep.
You are my neighbor. So we were just talking about this, but I'm in Minneapolis. I'm in the Twin Cities. You've spent some time here yourself.
I have.
And you're in Wisconsin now, right? Just right next door?
Yep. Right next door.
Nice. Well, I hope after coronavirus, after quarantine, I hope you actually get your local meet and greet with you told me you have a pretty active regional NPE group, and I hope you guys actually get to meet in person because it's amazing to meet other NPEs in person.
It is. And if anyone's listening, that's basically a group through Facebook called the NPE Friends. There's a gateway you have to go through where they kind of screen people to make sure that you're not a journalist or you're not somebody who's trying to exploit NPEs. And once you get into that NPE Friends group, you can get into the state subgroups, and they're pretty cool. Like you said, I think many of them were active prior to COVID.
They were. I know ours was. I'm in the Minneapolis subgroup. And we even had a meeting at a little pizza joint in one of the back rooms. It was amazing. Yeah. And you were just about to do your meeting before.
We were. They had one prior, and I wasn't part of the group at that point. I hadn't found out, and then I kind of helped somebody else get it set up here in my part of the state. And we were, like you said, we had a back room and a bar, and we were set to go.
Nice.
But I think it would be really cool just to see other people and kind of see that like commonality, that kind of that I don't know, I don't know. I've never been a soldier, but I think it might be like a VFW club meeting or something like that.
Exactly, because everyone, if you're an NPE and you're with others, you get into your stories right away. Everyone starts nodding along. It's like the sisterhood of nodding heads or sister and brotherhood. Everyone's just nodding along with each other like, yep. Okay. So again, that group, if you're listening, you could do a search on Facebook for is it called DNA NPE Friends, and find the gateway group through that search.
Yep. Or I think you can even message Catherine St. Clair.
Yes, you're right. And you were also talking about another group. Is that like an NPE for men, a man cave group?
Yeah. That's another kind of a subgroup from the NPE Friends, NPE Man Cave, and that's where you can just kind of. I kind of sometimes think that guys get more into the stories about brothers and fathers.
Yes.
And they seem to open up more in that group about that aspect of it than I think they do. I don't really read too many stories from men on the NPE Friends page.
I don't either. I don't hear from enough NPE men, honestly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've posted my own stuff on there, and I get a lot of likes from guys, but then I don't really hear anybody saying, yeah, man, I went through the same thing, but I kind of do on the Man Cave. So it's almost like guys are holding back a little bit, which I think, I noticed even with your prior podcasts, there's it's a little more female heavy than it is men.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
We don't have I'm glad that you were the next one on the list. I go just in the order of the emails I get, and the wait list can, right now it's 20 people deep out through December, but I don't ever pick through, well, you have to have a certain story, you have to have a certain gender. And yeah, you were the next person on the list. And I was like, okay, a man. I'm glad we get to hear from you today. And actually, we should probably get into your story
Yeah, for sure.
if you're ready.
Sure.
Okay, you've heard enough of them. So why don't you give us the background, and go ahead and let us know about your family of origin?
Okay, sure. So, uh, grew up with a brother and sister. My parents were married the whole time. Um, we had a cabin up north that was kind of centered around my dad's family, and I have cousins who are still up there. Um, real kind of strong family ties to my dad's side, and my mom's. Um, and um, yeah, never really suspected anything. I mean, I think I do look different than my brother and sister. I have dark hair, dark eyes. When we would go on vacations to Florida, I would tan. I would get brown. My brother and sister would burn really bad. They have lighter hair and kind of bluish, greenish eyes. Um, but I kind of, people would just say, "Oh, you look like your mom. You look like your mom." My mom had dark hair and dark eyes too, and so did some of her family members. And so I grew up just thinking, "Oh, okay, well, um, I must take after my mom would say, oh, you take after the Irish side, like the black Irish side of the family. They all have dark hair and dark eyes." And um, so I just kind of grew up thinking that. And then I guess once I took that 23andMe test, um, because I just wanted to see, like, okay, how Irish am I? And that was literally the start of it. Um, that's kind of when the Pandora's box kind of opened up for me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, you grew up with a brother and a sister. Your parents are still together?
Oh no, my father passed away 10 years ago. My mother passed away 2 years ago.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. I've kind of, they
Oh,
had good lives and um, good lives and quick deaths. So maybe, maybe that's the way to go for some people. Um,
when did you take the 23andMe test?
I took a 23andMe test because I wanted to see how Irish I was, to see like, oh, I'm like, I must be super Irish. Um, and plus, all my life, people were like, oh, you look Italian or you look Jewish. I have a big nose and dark hair. And so I would always be kind of mistaken for Jewish or Italian. Um, and I was like, oh yeah, cool. I was totally cool with that. So I took the 23andMe test just for fun. And my sister had taken the ancestry test, but for whatever reason, I took the 23andMe. And this was probably back in 2017. And I got the results back, and I was looking, it shows you like names of common ancestors, and there were a lot of like Jewish names in there. And I looked, and I was like 8% Jewish. And I was like, what the heck? I called my mom, and I was like, Mom, what's up with this? My God, like, 8% Jewish. Who's Jewish in our family? And she was like, oh, well, I guess, I always thought my grandfather, who came from Germany, I always thought they might be Jewish because they had kind of dark hair. And I was like, oh, okay. And then my sister was on ancestry.com. And so after I hung up with my mom, that was probably December, I ordered an ancestry kit. It came in, spit in the tube, sent it out. And about my mom passed away in the next February of 2018. And then about 2 weeks after she passed away, I got my ancestry results that came up. And I looked at my sister's, and there was no Jewish on hers. And she came up as a close relative. And so I went on Reddit. There's a group on Reddit, and I asked them, I was like, what does close relative mean? And they were like, well, it means she's your half sister. And I was like, wait, what? What is that? What does that mean? Oh. So then I posted on Reddit, and that somebody had sent me a private message, and she was like, hey, I'm on this group on Facebook. You should probably join this group on Facebook because you're an NPE, and I didn't know what an NPE meant. Never heard of that before at all. I'd heard, some people get surprises, but they really do have a great slogan. It's like the best club you never wanted to join. And that's the admission fee, is becoming an NPE. But so my sister, so I called my sister and I said, hey, this is coming up that you're my half sister. Do you know anything? And she's like, no. So then I went online and I looked up some kind of paternity, some kind of test that you can get. And it's pretty credentialed. I mean, I think Prince, like some kind of Prince paternity suit. This DNA testing place that handled that. They'd handled other high profile cases. I think it was like $250 per test. So I paid for my test and my sister's, and they did a paternity test. And that came back saying that we do not share the same father, because at that time I was like, well, maybe they made a mistake on Ancestry. But the more that I've come to find out, the more that they don't make mistakes. The DNA doesn't lie. I'm sure many of you have heard that. The DNA doesn't lie. And so we went from there. My problem was that I had this name pop up. I'd never heard of the name before, but that came up as a really super high second cousin on Ancestry.com. Turned out he was like a farmer in the middle of the state. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And there's another term that I heard of, search angels. And I had two fantastic people who started off helping me, based on this one name, trying to trace how would I be related to that person and who are his relatives, who could be potential fathers for me. And that kind of opened up like a massive can of worms for me. I eventually went through 4 search angels. 4 people were helping me. The last person who was helping me actually helps adoptees find biological parents based off of DNA results. And even she had to get help. I had a pretty tangled web of relatives. And it basically came down to I have a grandfather and a great-grandfather who each had 2 wives. Their first wives died. And they had sons with the first wife. They had sons with the second wife. So to make that even more confusing, there were surnames that I had on my Ancestry.com and my 23andMe. I even did my heritage. There were surnames that, because this was such a small part of the state, that back in the day, like, 1890 or 1921 or whatever, maybe second cousins got married, or there was even, I think, an instance where first cousins got married. And so that just tangled this whole web up even more. It wasn't a clear cut. Oh, this person is your half brother or half sister, so this person must be your father, your birth father. And so that's where it just got super confusing. And they were able to, the first two people were able to kind of guess, okay, this is probably your birth father, or he's within this set of brothers. But the problem was, like I said, it's a fairly common name in the area, and there were a lot of people in this that were popping up in this kind of theoretical family tree that they were creating for me. So the hard part was then trying to like narrow that down, and that's where I had to keep getting extra people in to help me out. And this the last lady that I worked with, and all these people worked out of the goodness of their heart. Nobody charged me anything. Nobody should charge you anything. They're just amazing people who do this just for probably the same reason you do, Lily. You're not looking for any kind of compensation out of this from us.
Mm-hmm.
You're just trying to help people. There's something in you. You have a good heart. You have a good spirit. And you're just trying to help guide other people. And so this last person was like, well, if you can get these people to test, okay, then we can start narrowing things down for you. So I just, I would contact these people either by phone or on Facebook, or I had kind of a form letter. I would just change the name, but it kind of described my thing, and it included pictures of me as a kid, as a teenager, as a young adult, and now, thinking, well, maybe somebody will see something or recognize something. And so I sent those out, and I would call the people, and I'd say, I had kind of a standard spiel. I'm trying to find out who my birth father is. And if you could test, I know you're doing this for me, but I'll pay for your test. I'll have it sent to your house. You can see the results. You have cousins and you have relatives that you'll be able to connect with on Ancestry. I had this whole sales pitch, and everybody agreed to do it. What I had going for me was that the two surnames that kept popping up, they're both crazy about their genealogy, to the point where they have, I would say, paperback size thickness books seriously, of like family history with pictures and stories, and each page has like a different relative and all their family's information. And so I had that going for me. So once they found out that once they kind of sniffed around my story, they got really, really interested, and they were like, "Yeah, let's find this out. Let's find out who you're from." And to me, that was like a huge, huge relief and a gift. And if I get emotional, it's thinking about that. Just the way that some people were so cool with like, yeah, let's find out your truth. And they know nothing about NPEs. And, if you've been around the NPE community, it's all about, like your truth. And they were saying these things like, this is your truth. And I was just like, whoa, I've heard that before, And so, yeah, so they helped me out. And I was finally able to get confirmation via, these people that came up to test, and they turned up as first cousins. My birth father's only other child was one that his wife brought into the marriage from a previous relationship, and he had passed away. So yeah, like I said, this web was not easy to untangle, and I could never have deciphered this without the help from the people who had like a lot of grit and good hearts. So yeah. So a couple of weeks ago, I hopped on my motorcycle and I rode about 200 miles to go meet that second cousin who's 86. I'm 52, so but it was weird. It was weird recognize when when I pulled up and walked over to meet him. It was like, whoa! I recognize, I'm recognizing things, features that I've never been able to really do for the most part with like half of my family. And to me, that was kind of like the whoa, like the
Mm.
Bill and Ted moment. Like, whoa. And it's like, I recognize this nose. I recognize these eyebrows. And so it's pretty wild, because I think one of the things that I struggled with most when I got my results and before I really was able to find out anything, was just, you look in the mirror, and I'm sure a lot of people have talked about this and a lot of people will talk about this, and everybody feels it. You look in the mirror and you're like, who is this looking back at me? And that's the thing that messed up my head the most. Um, just not knowing who's looking back at me, because when we grow up, we have all these stories about who we are, and we have, and you, as a child, you're interested, and you have to do the family tree for school, and um, you get this from your grandfather, or you get this from our side of the family, and then all of a sudden those things aren't true anymore, and so all these things, all these stories that make up the adult that you are, just kind of get torn up, and through no fault of your own. Um, and so I think that's where I think a lot of the struggle comes in. A lot of the mental struggle comes in. Is we have to kind of pick up those pieces and try to rearrange them in some way that makes sense to us. So for me, that was the toughest part.
Now, did you say that you are your birth father's only then biological child?
I am, yeah, yeah. Um, and
And he never knew he had one.
we don't know. People,
Oh, yeah, you don't know.
yeah, the relatives that my sister was really concerned with me, um, not telling anybody. She was like, you'll ruin your mom's reputation. You'll ruin mom's reputation. And I was like, she's dead. She doesn't really have a reputation anymore. You know,
Yep.
that was, and it sounds cold, but I just tried to approach it, kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm alive, um, so, I'm the one dealing with this. And so, I did talk to um, my dad had passed away 10 years ago. I talked to my mom's boyfriend, um, and he didn't know anything. I talked to my mom's cousin that she was almost like sisters with. She didn't know anything. I talked to my mom's niece, my dad's on my dad's side, who my mom was super close to, and she didn't know anything. I even talked to my 94-year-old aunt, who is my dad's sister, who is my dad's sister. She's still alive, and she didn't know anything either. And so people would say, I wonder if your dad knew, and that's where the rabbit holes come in, and that's like the second part of the mental struggle that I had, because just going down those rabbit holes, you know, um, I when I think about it clearly, my dad didn't. And when I talk my dad, I'm talking about the guy that raised me. Um, my dad, I think, treated me the same as the rest of the kids, as my brother and sister. But then you go down these rabbit holes and you think, well, why didn't he come see my kids' soccer games? He saw my brother's kids' football games and my sister's kids' basketball games. Um, and why did he go golfing all the time? Why didn't he do more things with me? Or you start going down these rabbit holes, and you know that would be my advice if you're listening to this and you're struggling. Try to avoid those rabbit holes. Um, they don't end up anywhere helpful for you.
Hmm.
But I think I don't think he knew. Um, my mom, the the story goes that, and I was told this early on, and my mom didn't know she was pregnant with me. They thought that she had a thyroid condition. The doctor was going to give her like inject a bunch of dyes and inks in there or something and get tested with x-rays, and that would have killed me. But she went and got a second opinion, and that's when she found out she was pregnant. And so my sister remembers being in the car with my little brother when they were little. She remembers sitting in the parking lot outside the hospital with my dad in the car in the winter while my mom was inside getting tested. She remembers my mom coming out smiling, and they knew it was going to be okay. Um, I because I have power of attorney from my mother, um, I was able to get the medical records from that visit, and because my sister thought, well, that's maybe that there's a clue in that if mom knew,
Yeah.
and you know, they ran all kinds of tests, so I don't think they knew. I think my mom could have gotten a pregnancy test probably, in the city where she was living, but they went almost halfway across the state to go to this hospital to get a second opinion. Um, so I don't think either of them knew. I have had relatives say my parents did go through kind of a rocky patch, and I'm the youngest of two kids, and the from what I know about my dad at that time, he did travel a lot. He's 10 years older than my mom. He would come home from the road and he would want home cooked meals and just to chill out at home because he's been traveling all week. And I think my mom was opposite. I think she was probably stuck at home with two kids all week and wanted to go out. And I think, that might have created a little frustration back in the late 60s when I was conceived, maybe. And that's another rabbit hole. So I'm kind of doing it right here. I tell people avoid rabbit holes, but that's a rabbit hole I go down. But it's an okay rabbit hole because my sister and some other people kind of thought, well, your mom was not at, one or two drinks and she would kind of start feeling it. And maybe, at one of your dad's business parties, she had too much to drink and somebody took advantage of her. That was my sister's stance for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But the more that I found, once I discovered who my birth father was, um, he was connected very heavily in um, this through the state of Wisconsin, um, down in Madison. He worked for various governors, um, and everybody I've talked to said that he was a stand-up guy. He did not drink a lot. My father was a salesman for a heating and air conditioning company. This guy would have had no reason to be at any of his parties.
Mm-hmm.
Um, two completely different worlds. And this guy had a lot of people under him too. And so, um, this cousin that I wrote up and talked to, I said, was he the party kind of guy? Did he like going to parties and getting hammered and stuff? He's like, no, no. He was very much about like, trying to be a good guy and maintain appearances because he took his job seriously and So yeah, so that how they. I do know that my mom worked for him when she got out of high school. He was working for a kind of like a cattle breeding company in part of the state, and she had been a secretary, and that's where I think they had met. And then a couple of years later, my mom married my dad, and then a couple of years later, I was born. So I think maybe she and my birth father knew each other before, and might have just hooked up at that time. I did find out from a cousin too that um, that my birth father had been in a long-term relationship with a woman who he wanted to marry, but she was taking care of her father. And um, so I think, who knows, maybe they were both dissatisfied or whatever. And yeah, these are the kind of rabbit holes that we all go down,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Um,
But it makes sense. You figured out. I can't even imagine how confusing all of this was over the months that it must have taken you to figure this out.
yeah.
But it sounds like so you found the connection for how your mom knew him and may have connected with your birth father.
Yep. Yep. I, I, I was, I had this last name. I had this one last name that kept popping up. And I'm not a very religious person at all, but um, when you're going through all this, you have a lot of those like moments. You wake up in the middle of the night, and your mind just starts. Your mind puts the pedal to the metal and just starts going. You just start thinking about things,
Mhm.
and I just kind of said, and I don't know if I said it out loud or in my head, but I was like, "Ma, come on, can you help me out here?" Um, and then, literally, like the next day, I was researching the names, looking at all the different people, and I was reading obituaries for people that could have been my dad. And I was reading this one, and it said the name of his business, that he had worked at the name of this business before going into working for the government down in Madison for the state. And so then I texted my sister. I was like, "What was the name of that company Mom worked for?" And she told me, and that matched up with this guy's obituary.
Mm.
So it was kind of like this weird moment of, like, I don't know, just like I said, I'm not a very religious person at all.
Mhm.
Um, but um, but that made me think, that made me wonder,
Wow.
um, like, okay, it's coincidence, I know, but
Yeah.
when you're flailing in the water, like we do when we find out, you grasp for anything. And I grasped onto that, and I was lucky I did, because um, it eventually turned out to be the guy.
You really just already said so much gratitude for the search angels, and thanks for explaining that because there will be people that will be interested in that. And you said you even had up to four people who were helping you.
Yeah,
Um, but you did a lot of your own detective work. It sounds like you're reading obituaries, you're
yeah, yeah.
researching. Yeah, I mean, we kind of become our own little mini experts in genealogy. It's kind of amazing. We're our own detectives, really.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's I got pretty obsessed with this. I got pretty obsessed with it. Um, it it it, it just it kind of consumed me in a way that nothing really ever has.
Mhm.
And part of the reason, I think, is I felt so lost, and I felt like there was really, even though I was starting to, like, I had joined that NPE Friends. It's a very solo thing that you go on this journey, and you're not prepared. You're not prepared. It's almost like those cliche kids on TV shows that I'm running away, and they have a backpack. And there's like some juice boxes and a pair of fake binoculars, and like a teddy bear stuffed in their backpack. It's like, well, yeah, you go. You're not going to get very far. Um, we just don't have the tools, to prepare you for this kind of thing. Nothing prepares you for this. Nothing. Um, you know, um, I remember when I was in college, I had a girlfriend who, I caught her with another guy, and like this feeling kind of feels like that, like I
Mm.
felt for those couple of days after finding out. But like, this is ongoing. It just it doesn't stop. It just keeps going and going and stretching out. Um, and but there was a point where I was like, I just felt so lost. It's like, I don't know. Like, I was never angry with my mom. I
Mhm.
forgave her pretty quick. because we're all humans, and we all make mistakes, and we all have needs, and we all, we're sexual creatures. So I get it. I was never angry with my mom. Um, I wasn't sad. I was. Some people find out, and they can't stop crying, and I don't think I've ever really cried. Um, I never felt that sadness or that despair. I just felt untethered. I just felt like, okay, well, a large part of me just evaporated, and I need to fill it in some way. And so, kind of, and like I said, talked about before, the whole, who's looking back at me in the mirror? Um, who is this guy? And so, I was able to actually talk to this guy's. His widow is still alive.
Hmm.
And she doesn't really want too much to do with me. And I'm okay with that. You really have to kind of go into, my advice for anybody is just kind of go into like a no expectations, no obligations relationship with any of these relatives that you're going to come in contact with. If you can establish those ground rules, I think it helps put them at ease, and it helps remind you that, these feelings of, oh, why aren't they accepting me, or why aren't they talking to me? They aren't going to be helpful for you, to keep repeating in your head.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to her. I got family history, medical information. She kept saying, like, well, what do you want? What do you want? And I would say, just some pictures or some stories about what kind of guy he was. Um, that whole nature versus nurture thing kind of comes to your head when you're dealing with this. And she wouldn't really give me stories. She'd answer direct questions like, how tall was he? What was his shoe size? What kind of food did he like? Those kind of things. I had a huge list of questions. She must have thought I was insane because but she wasn't giving me much. But these new cousins I found, these new first and second and third cousins who are really into their genealogy, I contact them on Facebook sometimes or whatever, and they'll say, "Oh, did you talk to her?" And I said, "Yeah, but she's not really. She's struggling." And so they would send me photos. So I've gotten photos from my birth father from like birth, teenage years, early adult. So that's awesome, and I've been really grateful for them too. So don't overlook those second and third cousins, because they just might be the biggest help you have in getting information about your birth father. But yeah, my birth father's wife, widow, she was like, well, I know how he felt about married women. I just can't imagine that he would do that. And I was like, well, I'm his son, and my kids are his grandkids, and eventually they'll have kids, and those will be his great grandkids. I tried to rationalize it that way with her, but I don't think that was helpful. Because she was like, well, I'm really struggling with this. The man I knew would not have a relationship with a married woman. And I even said, this was like, he didn't meet you until 7 years after I was born. So people change. And,
Yeah.
and she was like, well, maybe your mom was telling him that she was divorced. And I was like, well, I don't think so, because she would have had 2 little kids at home. And if she was meeting him when my dad was on the road, she would have to be home by a certain time to be back with the kids. And,
Yeah.
she didn't have a car, so he would have had to picked her up at home.
And he knew her from years before.
Yes.
Right. I mean, for probably been a couple years, I'm guessing.
Yeah. And so, so that's where, there's nobody around to really answer those questions, but, it just kind of has to be okay, well, like I try and put the puzzle together, and I'm sure it's only 30% of what it really was.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of just have to come to terms with it's, I'll never know. And you just got to accept that and move forward.
I really like the recommendation you gave. I could have learned this, or I could have used this myself a year ago, is to not have any sort of expectations when you're reaching out to these new family members, to not, you know, help you. Because sometimes they're not going to, just to come at it the way you did and that way you won't be hurt if they don't want to be very helpful or don't want to give you stories about your birth father or pictures. That's important, and I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
People need to hear that.
Yeah. That's how it would start just about every conversation is, you have no obligations and I have no expectations. But
Hmm.
if you could help me out, that would be, you'd be a really great person.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that, but the key thing that good friend told me was she kept saying, be kind to yourself, be kind to yourself. Um, and I think you really kind of do have to protect yourself a little bit towards these expectations of, because there's some people who they'll never find out the truth. It's just too many people have passed away. I read stories about 70-year-olds on this NPE friends Facebook group, and they're crushed because everybody that could know anything has passed away. And so I think the lucky ones of us are the ones who find it out, where we can connect with people that knew the people, that knew the person. Um, and I think that's, finding some friends you can talk to is a lot better than trying to talk to your relatives. Because even my brother and sister, would say like, um, uh, oh, dad was still your dad and you're still my brother. But that doesn't always, it's kind of like when, you're at a funeral for a family member and somebody's like, oh, they're in a better place. It's like, well, yeah, fuck you, but they're still, it doesn't really help me, you know, it's,
No, it doesn't.
it's just a platitude that you're saying. But I think people do struggle with how to respond. I think, this is new for them too. There's no Hallmark cards for NPEs. There's no, I don't know. There's no episodes of Saved by the Bell dealing with NPE. Nobody really
Yeah.
knows how to deal with it.
I know I don't know about you, but now when you go into someone dealing with something heavy in their life, similar to our NPE, revelation, is when someone is dealing with grief, when someone is dealing with trauma, it's like I have become so much more empathetic. I always thought I was before, but now I'm incredibly careful about what I say to them because of some of the insensitive things that have been said to me. I'm just like, oh wow, I really need to feel this person right now, what they're experiencing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had coworkers who I didn't tell many people about this. And I still haven't. But they say like, you've changed. You're different. And I would just be like, yeah, you know. They're like, well, what happened? It's like, yeah, just you think about things. I don't know. I did. I am kind of trying therapy. It's really that's even another kind of tricky thing. Like I was saying, there's no Hallmark cards, and there's no, there is that Pearl Jam song, "I'm Alive."
Alive. Yep.
Yeah. Eddie Vedder is actually NPE, which was kind of like, whoa, that's cool. So I thought therapy would help me because I was really struggling with like, who am I? And you, I feel like I've changed so much, and there's ways that I can't see, and maybe ways I don't want to see. And I think, and I thought maybe therapy would help. But it's hard to find a therapist, I think, even that knows how to come at this at the right angle. I tried two One person just wanted, she was, she was like, well, can your wife come in? Can your wife come in? And I would explain, this isn't about my wife. It's about me and the changes I'm going through and how it's affecting all these different parts of my life. Well, can your wife come in? And so I dumped her right away. And then I found a guy in my city who um, the closest I could come with was identity issues. And that's kind of like his specialty. But yeah, even he, I think, I, like sometimes it's almost like, well, I have half of the therapy session is me trying to get him to see it from my point of view.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's kind of been a struggle. Probably his best advice to me has been, and this is, I do this a lot when I think about this NPE stuff. Is he taught me two questions, and the first question is, are these thoughts helpful? Are they helping me? And then the second question that I need to ask myself when I go down these rabbit holes or I have these weird thoughts is, why am I having these thoughts? Like, what's the purpose of them? And so just trying to they do kind of help me just kind of self analyze myself. I think when I'm struggling with these changes that I've gone through, and I really do feel like I've changed. I do not feel like the same Scott that was here 2 years ago or 1 year ago.
Yeah. Not
It
after what you've been through.
Yeah, and I think that's common in some people, but not so common in other people. And I can't really, I haven't thought about it too much, but I think some people do change a lot, and not change for the worse or change for the better, but um, this does change you. This does have a way of changing you. I think probably the closest I can think is, I watch movies about soldiers in war, and they go through war and they come back to their small town, and everything's changed. And that's kind of what I kind of identify with, I think, now.
If people want to reach out to you and talk to you more about this, could they do that? And how could they?
Absolutely, absolutely. Lily, if you wouldn't mind kind of being the conduit, I'm kind of hesitant to put out any personal information. I do have a public job, and I don't really like. I I guess I have a very unique last name that's tied in with my email too. So
Yes,
yeah, so if they could go through you, that'd be awesome.
of course. I completely understand. And the email address for NPE Stories is always npestories@gmail.com. People frequently contact me to get in touch with the guests. I would be happy to pass that along to you.
This is something that's going to change your dynamics in a marriage. It's going to change your dynamics with your new half brother and half sister that were formerly your full brothers and sister. The only thing that hasn't changed is my relationship with this. My kids. My son knows because he wanted to do a test, and I was like, "Well, you're going to see some names come up that you probably have never heard of before," and I didn't want him to be in the position that I was in, that kind of like confused position. So I took him out for a beer and we kind of talked about it. I was like, "Well, how do you feel about this?" And he was totally cool. He's like, "Well, I know who my dad is," And so I would say too, if you're kind of hesitant about telling your own children, um, again, that kind of no expectations, no obligations. And I think the kids today are a lot more resilient, I think, than we give them credit for with this kind of stuff. I think they understand things change. They understand that this isn't the 1950s and everybody buries stuff. Um, or it's not the 1970s and people are just, I don't know, doing a lot of coke and having fun. I don't know. But yeah, so he was cool about it. I haven't told my daughter yet. She's 16, and I'm just kind of holding off a couple more years, and then I'll tell her.
How old's your son?
Oh, he's 21. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, and yeah, because I don't really know like how it would benefit my daughter right now to know. 16 is kind of shitty anyway. You know,
Mm.
um, you got a lot going on and stuff. So yeah, so I'll wait till she's older.
No, Scott, thank you so much for sharing all of this today. And I didn't even get into everything we could have. You really, hearing from a man's perspective in the NPE world was a little different, and I liked your way of thinking. I liked your acceptance, and it's just really nice to hear another story. I was nodding along the whole time, so thank you so much for sharing today.
Lily, the thanks should be all mine because um, I think just it's good to be heard.
Thanks again to Scott for sharing today. These stories are here for us to identify with. If you are an NPE that would like to share your story, email npestories@gmail.com. You do not have to give any identifying information. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, I'd like to hear from you. Subscribe to this podcast to hear more. Come, heal with us.